Hey all you cool cats and kittens, it's Gemma here from Coronation Street, and I'm with...
Michael. The decidedly English Michael.
Well, I married Michael because he's got a really big estate with loads of big cats on it.
What are we listening to?
No. We're here to talk about pets on Coronation Street because this is our Coronation Street pet chat from episode 100 and what?
149.
149.
The podcast ages ago. This is the first feature discussion that we did on the podcast once we started going a bit more regular with them. So we thought that talking about pets, everyone likes animals, don't they?
Everyone likes an animal story, apparently.
Yeah.
In 7 parts or more.
And you know what? This week was International Pets Day. It was last Saturday. And we had a pet story on Coronation Street last week.
We did,
Poor
a tragic
Eccles
pet
was
story.
taken from us. In fact,
Too soon.
We've gained and lost a few pets on Coronation Street since we recorded this. Not only have we lost Eccles, but also Daryl the rat.
Yeah,
but
I know.
we have gained who's
We've
new?
gained Cerberus.
Yes,
Bo,
Sylvester the
who
cat.
is missing in action, I presume.
Bo has come and gone and been forgotten about already.
Middle Eastern jaunt there.
Indeed.
Bringing freedom to people
apart
that
from
don't
those,
want it.
apart from those last few, this
Who
is
else was there?
This is
Anyone
a
else?
up to date and thorough account of all pets on Coronation Street for the past 60 years.
Yeah.
So thorough.
Exactly.
Enjoy.
Have a great time.
Welcome, listener, to our first monthly feature discussion on Conversation Street. This week we're going to be covering the topic of pets on Coronation Street, which is a nice way to start, isn't it? Because we like pets. I always used to have lots of pets when I was growing up.
Did you?
Yeah, I had.
Not real ones.
What do you mean?
Not real pets.
I did. I had.
Just cats and
I had a cat
rubbish.
and I had a rabbit and I had a guinea pig and I had 2 gerbils called Michelangelo and Donatello. And I had
called Starbug.
I had a hamster called Starbug, which is my red dwarf hamster. But when my dad was too embarrassed to call him Starbug at the vets, so he called him Holly. And I had a couple of hamsters, and we had fish in the pond. Yeah, we had loads of. We had a menagerie at some point. You had some exciting pets as well, didn't you? What did you have when you were growing up?
Loads of stuff.
Loads of dogs.
Loads and loads of dogs, because my mum and nan used to breed champion chihuahuas.
Oh, champions.
They were.
Yes, they were. What were those? You had terrapins when I first met you, didn't you?
3 terrapins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Used to have xenopus frogs.
Did you? I didn't know you had frogs.
Yeah, used to have lots of
Lovely.
weird snails.
You had
a
lizards,
iguana,
didn't you?
a skink, and a gecko.
What's a skink?
It's a very smooth one. He was called Floyd. Cats, rabbits.
You had an
guinea
evil
pigs.
rabbit, I remember that.
Yeah, evil rabbit used to try to dig a hole in me. She's horrible.
So
Loads
basically,
and loads of birds. We used to breed lovebirds, budgies, parakeets, and quail.
I think you win on the pets front.
That's why I was dissing your pet. Oh, we had loads of fish as
I
well.
just had standard pets. You had exciting ones. But anyway, between us, we know a lot about pets, and so we're going to have a chat about the pets of Corrie's past because recently there's been a new canine appearing on the street, Rover, who is played by Cookie, Simon Gregson's dog, and we still can't decide whether or not he's going to be staying in the programme or not. She. Sorry.
Why do you get the genders wrong?
Sorry, she. Because Rover.
It's a family trait,
I know.
isn't it?
Oh, yeah, my mum does that. It's because Rover's a kind of a name for a boy's dog, isn't it? But I'll try and remember.
Boy's dog.
A boy dog. A boy dog.
Boy's dog.
Pets that we have on the street at the moment, apart from Rover, are Eccles, who's kind of the biggest Corrie pet, isn't she? She's like she's had her own storylines
like
and everything.
mascot.
Yeah. We've got Ozzy, who,
Doesn't
like
do
Maria,
much.
only shows up once every few months and doesn't really do anything. Just kind of sits there and looks nice. Daryl the rat, who's kind of the comedy pet of Craig's rat, and we've also got a load of chickens in the Nazir's back garden making boring storylines.
And eggs.
Have they made any eggs yet?
I can't remember.
Oh no, they did. They were they'd escaped and laid them in David's garden or something silly like that, hadn't they? So there's a good number of pets going on. There's always been some pets in Coronation Street. There's been dogs, there's been cats, there's been budgies, pigeons, rabbits, even a couple of pigs and minor birds at some points. So we're going to be running down some of the bigger pets that have graced the cobbles.
I'm surprised they never had a tortoise.
They have had a tortoise.
Oh, that's true. Oh, yeah.
I didn't mention the flashes, ashes.
That's weird because that's a very old-fashioned pet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you remember S.E.A. Trott, the Roald Dahl book?
Of course, yeah. So we're going to be talking about some of the bigger Corrie pets, some of the other mini animal storylines, and also thinking about some talking points around
about them.
animals.
Let's talk about Bobby, Minnie Caldwell's beloved ginger cat.
Yeah, I think Bobby was the first main Coronation Street pet. And Minnie Caldwell was a bit of a crazy cat woman. She was one of the three
witches
of the snug, the Roman snug. There was Ina and Minnie and Martha, and Minnie was a bit of a, I mean, I've not really seen any episodes with her in, but she seems, from what I can see, being a bit of a batty old woman who was obsessed with her cats, and the cats were her life, and this Bobby was the most important kind of person in Minnie's life. And Ina, I remember reading, used to get quite annoyed the fact that Minnie would just be going off on one about her cats, and there was a couple of times when Ina had to go and live with Minnie, and she couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand sharing the house with this cat that was more important than her.
This is the thing about pets, is that they're very much like children.
She was to Minnie.
If you don't have any of your own, you don't care at all about anyone else's.
I think that's the situation we're in, isn't it?
Could be.
We don't have any children, and our pets are our pet. Our cat is our life. She's our little cat
baby,
isn't she? She's our little cat baby.
Very idiot.
I think we treat our cat the same way that Minnie used to treat Bobby. And in 1968, Bobby went missing, so Minnie was devastated by that. She thought she'd found him stuck on a viaduct, and then Stan Ogden climbed up to go and get him, but it turned out that it wasn't actually Bobby at all. But she took him in anyway, and because it was a stray, and she initially called him Sonny Jim, which was a nickname for her lodger Jed Stone, but he was later renamed Bobby because she kept calling him Bobby. She couldn't. Kind of getting a bit confused in her old age. So the stories around Bobby generally revolved around Ina getting wound up by Minnie's obsession. Bobby going missing again, and eventually he caught and ate Albert Tatlock's pigeon Gilbert. And when Jed returned to Coronation Street in 2008, he had this long-haired cat, also called Sonny Jim, which is a bit of a nice throwback to the past. And Tony Gordon wanted to evict Jed from his house so he could knock it down. He dumped Sonny Jim on the street, but he was later found and returned to his owner by Emily Bishop.
We also have Harry or Harriet and Randy the Budgies, and this Harry was originally owned by Mavis Wilton. He was called Harry until he laid an egg in 1982. I don't know how you can get the gender of a budgie confused, because it's very obvious.
Well, we don't all have menageries back at home when we were little.
It's obvious though.
Why?
Because
do they look different?
Yeah, they've got imagine the budgies beak, and they've got above it, they've got their nostrils.
Yeah.
The blue ones are boys and the brown ones are girls.
Oh really?
Yes, this is very simple.
Well, Mavis was a bit ditzy and she probably didn't realise.
When they're adolescent, maybe the colours don't come through properly. But she was balmy because she carried the bra, the egg around in her bra, hoping that it would hatch. And she had to have a little birds and the bees talk from the RSPCA.
There needed to be a cock to fertilise the egg.
A cock, exactly. Percy offered up his, Randy, to mate with Harriet, but Mavis thought he was not suitable because he'd knocked about a bit. And Harriet then died of shock after moving house to number 4 in 1990, and she was going to bury her in the pet cemetery, but unfortunately the only plot available was next to a cat.
Yeah, so Derek let her bury it in the back garden.
Yeah.
She initially didn't want it buried in the back garden and said that that's not good enough and it needs to be a proper cemetery, but that's where she ended up. And she was replaced by a new budgie, imaginatively called Harry. And by 1994, back on the subject of Percy Sugden, he thought that Randy had been a record breaker because he'd reached the ripe old age of 18. And I think, I don't know, how long do budgies usually last for?
Not that long.
Not that long, but it turned out that Emily had to admit to him that the original Randy died in 1988 and she'd replaced him without telling him. That'd be so sad for that to happen.
Have you ever had a budgie before?
No, I haven't had birds. My mum's scared of birds.
Oh, yeah,
because
that's right.
When my mum was little, she had really long hair and she went to, I think there must have been a friend who owned one and it escaped and got tangled up in her hair. And that would leave anybody terrified of them, I think.
We used to breed them, but I always used to have one of my own. And he was called Joey. And he knew loads of tricks and he was awesome.
Is it realistic to think that somebody could replace a budgie with another one and you don't realise? Because I think, like, with our cat, if somebody just got another silver tabby and said, oh, here's Sappy, you'd know, wouldn't you? But do budgies all look the same enough that you could get away with that?
It depends on how observant you were, because there's quite a few standard, like, plumage and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't. I wouldn't hazard a guess, to be honest.
It's all for the comedy. I think that those budgies were definitely comedy pets. Do you remember Monica, Tyrone's dog?
Yes.
I think that was like the first main Corrie pet that I remember when I started watching it. Monica first appeared on the 25th of October 1999 and was last seen in 2008. And it was a bit weird because when she never had any kind of formal exit. She never like died or anything. She just like wasn't in it anymore. But I think Tyrone since has talked about her and confirmed that she's dead. But it was a bit sad that she didn't get an exit storyline.
No.
So Monica was found as a stray and named after Monica from Friends, who was famous for being stick thin and skinny, just like a greyhound, all wiry and stuff and bony.
Excellent chef.
Who is?
Monica.
Is she? Oh, I didn't know that. So she lived at the B&B owned by the Duckworth at first, and she slept in the shed, sometimes accompanied by Tyrone because she was making a heck of a racket at night. And Tyrone, how old must he have been then? He was about 15 or so, and 15, 16, and he couldn't bear to be away from his dog, so he slept in the shed with her. But he kind of realised that maybe this dog actually had an owner, and it turned out she was microchipped, and they found the owner, and there was some kind of dispute between this woman who owned the dog and her ex-husband, and she was like, look, I don't want the dog anymore, you can have her. So Monica then belongs to Tyrone, and she had a short-lived career as a racing dog. She raced at the greyhound track under the name of Tyrone's Torpedo, but that was sadly cut short when she was knocked down by a car. But she was okay, they didn't kill her.
No, it's fine.
They fixed her up.
She's not a turkey.
She had to have a bit of metal rod stuck in her leg or something, but she would never race again. And there weren't really very many exciting storylines with Monica, but she was kidnapped by Maya Sharma in 2004 when she was going through a particularly crazy phase. But then she came back and she just disappeared off the screen. But Monica was kind of one of the dogs that was one of the reasons why Tyrone and Maria bonded with each other initially, because they were working at the kennels together or something, and so it was brought them together. Although sadly it didn't last. No. Now, Gemma, surely your favourite Corrie pet always must be Schmeichel.
Yeah, I reckon so.
I think in the annals of Corrie pets, Schmeichel is the most important, and maybe Jack's pigeons. We haven't even got anything about her. Jack's pigeons are kind of synonymous with Corrie in a way. Well, Corrie and the pigeons.
Yes.
The pigeons on the street, Jack's pigeons. But of the pets that have had stories and names and everything, Schmeichel is definitely the most well remembered one.
Yeah, because it fed so well into Chesney's life story almost.
Exactly.
And I was so upset when they got rid of him, because it felt like they were sort of going, oh, well, he's a man now. He put aside childish things such as this dog.
If you look back and find some clips on YouTube, it's quite cute to see clips of Schmeichel when he was a puppy, because he's turned into this massive Great Dane that was like bigger than Chesney, wasn't he, at points? But he was a little tiny little puppy at the beginning. He was initially came into the show because after Maya kidnapped Monica, she then ended up feeling guilty and bought Tyrone a Great Dane, this Great Dane puppy as a replacement.
Why would
but then
do that? What kind of...
She
must have been crazy.
She must have been crazy. But eventually Monica came back home and Tyrone couldn't look after the two dogs at the time, so he passed Schmeichel on to Chesney, and they grew on to become the best of friends.
Oh, it's so cute.
He was, because like when Chesney was growing up, he was so abused basically by his mother, or neglected by his mum, and Schmeichel was the one animal that he could talk to and share all his woes with, and they grew up together, didn't they, in a way. Although the most famous, I think, scene with Schmeichel didn't even have anything to do with Chesney, which is the famous hot tub scene. When Les and Scylla had this massive hot tub installed in their bathroom, and then Schmeichel jumps in and they fall through the ceiling. Comedy Corrie gold.
Laugh.
Yes. Chesney was basically inseparable from Schmeichel. He took him with him when he ran away from home in 2007 and fought to get him back when the RSPCA took him away in 2008. And then in 2011, when Fizz had given birth to Hope, she wanted to get rid of Schmeichel because
she's evil.
Didn't want a massive dog with their tiny little baby at home. And Chesney
you probably wouldn't even notice if he ate it, to be honest.
Wouldn't even touch the sides.
No.
So Chesney took Schmeichel and moved out. I think he went to go live with Katie or something for a time. But he came back, but it didn't last for long because later that year, Schmeichel got liver cancer and died.
So sad. I hated it.
I know this was in the months running up to Joseph's birth, wasn't it? And and Katie was saying to Chesney, look, you're gonna be a dad now. You got to be more responsible. And Chesney was trying to fight for the vets to save him and cure him, even though it wasn't really possible. And it was so sad. And eventually he was like, okay, you have to put him to sleep. And that was so sad, wasn't it? The scene where he's put to sleep
as well. It's like, oh, what are you gonna do now?
Yeah.
He's such a huge, literally part of Chesney's life. I really hated that storyline. I felt like somebody that didn't like dogs wrote that storyline.
But I thought it was quite a dignified way that he left. I mean, if he'd have just been like hit by a car or something and it had been over, I think that would have been worse. But the fact that he died there and he was surrounded by the boy who grew up with him and loved him, I thought that was quite sweet. You can't
get me to like this storyline.
Okay.
That's the saddest thing about big dogs, is that they don't live as long. Smaller dogs live much longer.
Like Eccles. Eccles has been knocking around for ages now, hasn't she?
Yeah.
She's a border terrier, previously owned by a friend of Blanche, Lena Thistlewood. But old Lena died in January 2006, and she left this dog to Blanche. Eccles' original name was Lady Freckles.
Of course it was.
But Amy couldn't pronounce that, so it was shortened to Eccles, which is quite cool.
It's very cute.
It's a nice name, isn't it, for a Corrie dog as well, because Eccles is the place. It's just up the road from where Coronation Street is filmed, isn't it? That's where we stayed.
And very nice cakes, or whatever they are.
If you like raisins, which I don't.
Yes. Anyway.
Eccles has been kind of involved in a few storylines. I mean, she's had her own recently, hasn't she? Like when.
She found the bracelet after the murders.
Oh yeah. She found.
You mean when she ran away and got knocked over?
She ran away, got knocked over, and also there was that thing. Was it last year when Amy pretended that Eccles had bit her, and Tracy was going to get her put down?
Yeah, but, a cow.
Then Sophie and Maddie had to rescue her, and they were like hiding Eccles away, and Tim was getting allergic to her.
Yeah.
And also Eccles was the one that was to blame partly for Ken's affair with Martha Fraser in 2009.
Partly her fault, but you can't really
fully blame
the
dog for this, because Ken was taking her on a walk down by the canals, and Eccles chased after some ducks and jumped into the water, and Martha rescued her, and Ken and Martha's eyes met over the soggy dog.
Soggy dog.
And it all went. Or blossomed from there.
Exactly. So Eccles has had quite a few storylines because, like I said, she also found. Well, she was partly responsible for helping to find Steph's charm bracelet.
Quite a lot seems to happen when people are out on walks with Eccles, don't they? Like, wasn't it when Roy went mad a few years ago, and then he ended up walking on the common in his dressing gown? Well, didn't Deirdre find him there because she was walking Eccles? And
maybe we should get a dog. It seems more exciting.
Think all the drama we're missing just because we never have our dogs to go for a walk.
Exactly.
So they're the main.
Those are the main dog
Corrie
pets.
Yeah. So, but there's been lots of others. So a quick rundown of some other Corrie pet tidbits. Well, the first one isn't really a pet, but I always remembered reading about this in a book. There was a sea lion in Coronation Street in 1962.
Of course there was.
I can't imagine that they'd even be allowed to have a sea lion on the programme now. Because
France, after all.
Yeah, when I lived in France, they had a sea lion treated very cruelly, and then living in a It was a little pond in a public garden in Cherbourg, and
it was really tragic.
It was, but it was kind of cool to go and see it, wasn't it? Yeah. Used to go and see the sea lion. But anyway, Dennis Tanner, who was a talent agent back then, was organising a concert starring the Blue Streak Rockets. He ended up, for one reason or another, getting stuck with them for the night, and he put them up at his house, but the sea lion, which was part of that act, was placed in Jack and Annie Walker's bath at the Rovers when they were away somewhere. But they came back, and you can imagine Annie Walker's reaction at walking in to find a sea lion in the bath.
I don't like it when that happens.
There's been a couple of horses on Coronation Street as well. Most famously, Betty's Hotshot, who was a racehorse bought by some of the Rovers regulars on impulse in 1996. There was a storyline when they all went off to the Grand National or something, and I remember they were on the coach on the way there, and they're looking down the names of the horses, and this one called Betty's Hotshot came up. Obviously sounded like Betty's Hot Pot, and they had a couple of little storylines involving buying a horse.
Quite cool.
And then there was I don't think it was turned into a horse meat. I can't remember what happened to it. It
turned out to be an Iceland lasagna. For one. Jack's pigeons. We've already mentioned them, but they were obviously quite
they were important to Jack's life, weren't they? Because they were like an escape from Vera.
Yeah.
Sometimes if things were getting too difficult for Jack and getting nagged by his wife, he'd go out there and he'd like give his pigeons a stroke. And it was a bit of a rival for Vera's affection. So I think sometimes she was a bit sick of them, really.
A bit annoying. One time she served him pigeon pie and told him it was one of his pigeons, and that was when he had pretended
under hypnosis to regress to lusty Jack, and he was going around feeling up all the women of the street or something. And so Vera got her own back by saying, because this lusty Jack was somebody who was like supposed to be from the 1900s or something, so she said, "Oh, lusty Jack, I bought you a pigeon pie." Obviously what they ate back then. And Jack came clean that he was kind of putting it on, I think. Also he had this favourite pigeon called Fergie, which was later presented to him stuffed by Tyrone, which is a bit freaky. I wouldn't quite like the idea of that.
Flash, the tortoise, owned by Mandy. Do you remember Mandy?
Yeah. What a failure that character was.
So Lloyd thinks he threw it away. Then he told Mandy he found him dead and had him cremated. Mandy found him at the tip, and Lloyd, they all went out to throw these ashes of this pretend tortoise.
Yeah, because
in the woods.
Mandy found out that they went to the tip and found out the tortoise hadn't been killed, because they were clearing out her stuff or something, weren't they? And he didn't realise that this tortoise was hibernating in a box.
To be fair, it's not the sort of thing I would have looked out for either.
I wouldn't have expected to find that. But they go off and scatter these ashes, and I can't remember what the ashes were. Was it like some newspaper ash or something that she gave him? And then there's a big gust of wind and he got it in his face, which is quite funny. But quite a few of the Corrie pet storylines are just like little throwaway comedy things, and that was definitely one. It was a bit silly.
Jesse Chadwick's parrot, John, hated Eileen. We were talking about Eileen's
choice of men
lovers earlier, and he was one of the ones I remembered as being particularly suited. Apart from John, I didn't like her.
There was also Leanne the rabbit, which I thought was
far more interesting personality than real Leanne.
There've been a couple. It was actually. There was a couple of, but Leanne doesn't go at it like rabbits when she was a prostitute.
That's true.
That was Tracy was called an old Leanne a dirty old prosy, wasn't she? She don't let it drop. Yeah, so Leanne Tracy was a male rabbit owned by Simon, because he was so obsessed with his mum Leanne. And then I can't remember whether it was when Leanne was still... No, it must have been after Leanne had left Peter one time.
Probably.
And Simon's like, I want to go with rabbit Leanne, even though it was a boy. This rabbit was quite indestructible at first, because when Peter accidentally set the flat on fire, Leanne somehow managed to survive this, but it was dead later in the year anyway. So that's kind of sad to Simon. Yeah, David had a rabbit as well called Barney. I don't remember any interesting storylines that Barney was involved in, but I suppose young boys and rabbits go together quite well.
Did you know that if the Green Party got in the general election, which is quite unlikely, but still, they wanted to ban people owning rabbits in cages?
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Interesting fact. Teresa the turkey. We mentioned her earlier, didn't we?
Yes.
That was one of the early Battersby storylines. At Christmas 1997, Les Battersby got a live turkey for Christmas dinner, and he was going to slaughter it himself and cook it. And this is where I can't remember whether Toya was a vegetarian or not at that stage, but she was definitely obsessed with Spider Nugent, and he was the eco warrior, veggie eco warrior, and they colluded together to rescue this turkey, but it ended up escaping and went under the wheels of Les Battersby's car. But Les cooks it anyway, and there's a funny scene where they kind of all not sure whether or not they can face eating this turkey, and Toya's like saying she can still see the tyre marks on it. So that was quite funny.
It would taste horrible, wouldn't it?
I know. So they are some of the many pets that Coronation Street have had. There's never been any massive storylines involved with pets, because
it's
they
difficult.
can't act.
They're not very good at acting, are they?
No.
I tell you what, the best animal actor I think I've ever seen, you don't particularly like, and this is Donkey in Shrek.
No, I'm not.
He's pretty good.
He's not real. I hate Donkey. Do you think it's important to have pets in soaps anyway? Reflects real life?
Yeah, they're very much a part of, especially in this country, we're quite a famous nation of animal lovers, aren't we, I think?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So it'd be odd not to have them. Although, I mean, they don't usually have pets like pottering around in the background, do they? If there's going to be a dog in the scene, there's usually like a reason for it to be there, like just coming back from a walk or whatever.
Much like children, they're more trouble than they're worth, aren't they? I think.
Yeah.
You've got to employ probably lots of extra people.
Yeah, I suppose that's
Dog
why
wrangler.
there are so many dogs in Coronation Street over other pets. That's definitely the most common animal because
They're
you're
easy
more
to
likely
train.
they're easy to train, exactly, and you can have like people going off to have a walking the dog and discovering some kind of mystery.
Yeah, you
But
can't. What can you do with a cat?
no, I mean, you had old Bobby going missing, which is
Standard cat storyline, isn't it?
yeah. I just like. I'd like the idea of having just the animals walking, like a cat walking kind of around the house, but I guess it could take away from the drama sometimes.
Well, it would be looking at everyone, wouldn't it? It'd be sitting there looking at the cameraman and the boom operator, just giving the whole game away.
Yeah, because like with our cat, she still likes to spend a lot of time sitting up on our top shelves and everything. I'd like to imagine some kind of really dramatic scene and the cat just sitting there, just looking down,
like
saying, "I'm above all of
goes,
this." Or sometimes she gets into these mad phases and tears
Just
around
running
the
around
house,
like a
running back and
lunatic.
forth in the room, and running up. And I can imagine like a cat running up the Platt stairs or something.
You couldn't
but-
just have a cat wandering loose because it would get everywhere, wouldn't it? And
yeah,
would
it wouldn't
get
be
run
bound by
over.
the confines of the fourth wall.
No, exactly. It'd be crawling on top of cameramen and stuff.
Yeah, which is a shame really. But I suppose I wonder if they had like was it Brookside that was all filmed inside actual houses rather than sets?
Was it?
Yeah, I think so. I think they had a purpose-built plot of houses for Brookside, so you can imagine that a cat might be
Yeah,
more
just to
likely
make sure you close the window.
Yeah, you could let it roam free a little bit more.
But this isn't Brookside. This is Coronation Street.
Yeah, I'd like there to be more cats. Maxine had a cat. I think that was the last cat I remember, and it was just there to like be stroked and like look down on people, but there was never a storyline. And then when Maxine ended up getting whacked on the head, Ashley got rid of the cat. He chased her away.
Yeah, that was really horrible.
He came back home one day and saw the cat in the garden because he reminded her of Maxine.
What a
He's like,
git.
"Get away from me!"
Did you mention about the cats that were in the credits, in the opening credits?
We'll talk about that at the end. I think that makes a nice
Okay.
footnote to this whole
Alright,
storyline.
okay.
Do you think that any current characters' live or stories would be enhanced by having a pet? The kind of people that have...
Leanne. Anything would make her more exciting, wouldn't it? I'd like her to have a parrot,
Why?
and it just sits on her shoulder, and every time she says anything, it goes, "Ah, Leanne!" Just why not?
I think that the pets are often given to children, aren't they? Like there was the David
Yes.
and his rabbit and Simon and everything.
It symbolises loneliness in childhood, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And it gives them
needing a friend as a child.
It gives them somebody to talk to that it doesn't matter if they just sit there blankly.
Yeah, well,
nothing to say.
I suppose that's what it's like with Craig, isn't it, at the moment? Because he's
Craig
got
and
his
his
rat
rat,
and
yeah.
he hasn't got any other friends apart from Faye. So,
Yeah, you do need sometimes just a pet.
yeah.
To-
Well, are there any lonely old people that could do with one?
No, they've all ganged up together, haven't they?
I could imagine Rita having a pet.
I'm surprised that Mary doesn't have some eccentric animal, like a
Actually,
snake
yeah,
or something.
she could. She could have like a
corn snake or
a
something,
vivarium
a garter snake.
in a. Well, she doesn't have a camper van
No.
anymore, but you can imagine that being in there and then getting loose or something.
Or
Or
like a weird spider or something
yeah, something.
attention-seeking.
Yeah, something weird like that would be good for Mary. I don't know what other storylines we could have with pets though, because like we said, because you
Well,
can't
what
train
about-
the animals to do anything.
Well, what about showing? Like breeding or showing an animal?
Yeah,
How about a fancy hamster? How about that? Fancy hamster. Or a guinea pig. In Switzerland, it's illegal to have a guinea pig by itself
Why?
because they get lonely.
Oh.
And if your guinea pig dies, they've got a special service that finds it a companion.
How weird. Yeah, having a show dog would be interesting. I think there've been a couple of like racing dogs in Coronation Street's past. I think like was it Chalky Whiteley or someone in the 80s used to have a greyhound that used to race. But having a show dog could be quite
Do you
interesting.
remember my nan's dog Teddy?
No.
My nan used to
never
have
knew that.
a crazy Joe called Bobby. He was the ugliest Joe I've ever seen in my life. And then she got another dog called Teddy, who was the most beautiful chihuahua you've ever seen in your entire life. But he was so up himself. I've never known a dog more conceited than Teddy. And he wouldn't let you touch him. He was so beautiful with his lovely fur and everything. And you could tell that he was looking down his nose at all of us. So in the end, she got rid of him.
I wonder whether I was having a look at some news headlines about pets, and I was wondering whether any of these could translate into storylines. The first one I found the headline was "Children more likely to confide in pets than siblings."
That was certainly true for me.
Yes, so you didn't have any siblings, did you?
No.
So this was based on a 10-year study of 100 UK families, and they were saying how how children interacted with pets and everything. And apparently, research shows that children facing emotional difficulties such as bereavement, divorce, instability, and illness place a particular importance on their pets. And I think that that's perfect for a soap, because soaps are all about bereavement, divorce, instability, and illness.
That should be their slogan, shouldn't it?
Yeah, and also the study showed that the relationships are strongest between girls and their dogs. And it looked at children when they reached the age of 12, how they interacted with their pets. And so I wonder whether, I mean, it's probably too late now, if Faye had a pet.
Maybe she would never have got pregnant.
Well, no, if she got pregnant and had a pet, I mean, she needs somebody to confide in, really. I mean, she's got Craig.
She's got a baby now. It's kind of the same.
Yeah, but you can almost imagine her, if she had a pet, like neglecting the baby for the pet.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I can even imagine like Tim. A crazy thing that he would do now is like
buy
her an animal or something.
Yeah.
And he'd probably say, "Oh, if she could, she'll learn to look after. No, I can say it's like she'll learn to look after this dog. So maybe then she'll be able to apply those skills to her baby, which she's neglecting, and
pick up the pee off the floor."
Exactly.
It's quite interesting that the relationship's strongest between girls and their dogs, because that is not at all the stereotype, is it? Of girls and dogs.
Yeah. Well, maybe this could be a storyline like for Asher or something, because they don't seem to be doing anything with it. Asher and Ardy are both blank slates at the moment, aren't they? So maybe some kind of pet-related storyline could be a way of getting them something to do on the programme, or Amy maybe.
Oh, I love my dog, Sasha.
Is he dead?
When I was little, that was my pet. She was a Akita Alsatian cross, so she was big dog.
Yeah.
And Rachel and Lorraine had their Samoyed fox.
Yeah, that was a cool dog.
Yeah.
There's
they
also
hated each other.
I saw a headline saying pampered pets could pose a serious health hazard by carrying worms, tuberculosis, and superbugs.
That is such a weird. It sounds like it's trying to imply that pets that are more lavished attention upon them.
I don't think it was saying that.
Sort of multiply more superbugs.
But there could be some kind of health scare on Coronation Street, or like if like I don't know, Eccles had some kind of horrible disease and then they were having to put her down, or I don't know, that like could cause a bit of drama. Eccles, yeah.
It's probably because people let their dogs lick their faces. Foul.
I think this is what it was saying. Yeah, like when you get
dogs lick their bums. As much as I love dogs, I do not let them lick my face at all, because I know what else they lick.
We've had a storyline that's like could be a soap storyline that's based on our problems. Could be just revolving around poorly pets and insurance, because our cat has been so sickly since she was born, and we are insured, and we've had to spend, how much have we spent on her? Hundreds or over thousands of pounds on like vaccinations and everything for our cats. And another headline said that pet dogs are much more likely than cats to be insured by their owners, so could be a storyline of somebody kind of not having pet insurance.
There are two things that annoy me about people who have cats.
What?
Number one is when they don't have insurance, and number two is when they don't get them spayed. And if you're a person who has a cat and you've done neither of those things, don't bother talking to me about anything. Because nothing annoys me more in pet ownership than how
Well, that sounds like it could be a good
selfish and ignorant and stupid it is.
You can get rolled up by storyline.
It really annoys me when people don't have them. If you can't afford pet insurance, you can't afford a cat. I'm very sorry. It's just a basic fact.
Number of exotic pets found dumped on the streets of London rising. Can this translate to Manchester?
I would like there to be a storyline where there's an alligator in the sewer system under Weatherfield.
That sounds like if it's happened in New York, but maybe not Weatherfield.
Why not here?
Well, these exotic... I didn't even realise this. Apparently, in last year in London, there were 1,853 reptiles rescued by the RSPCA in London, including 434 bearded dragons. There's like people getting these pets that they think are going to be amazing and exotic, and yeah, exactly, and then they end up realising that they can't look after them.
They are quite boring.
Lizards are. They don't do much, do they? Well, this was biggest when there was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were big, weren't they? When we were little, and everyone used to get turtles and then abandon them, which is quite sad.
That's where a couple of our terrapins came from. So somebody was keeping them in a empty ice cream tub. Pathetic.
That's horrible.
It
So
is horrible.
That's the kind of thing that maybe Mary could rescue, couldn't she? She could find an abandoned animal and take it under her wing.
A really cool storyline for her to sort of slowly descend into just complete an animal menagerie of like she can't stop rescuing animals, and in the end she has to.
Because Mary is basically a crazy cat lady, but without the cats at the moment,
really
isn't
she?
She needs some kind of animal mascot. But that could be a good issue-related storyline about abandoning exotic pets or trying to warning people of the dangers of buying these pets that seem like they're going to be cool at first.
Yeah.
So I quite like the idea of that.
Where was it in Cornwall that they've got that animal hospital? Is it Mevagissey?
I don't remember.
I can just imagine her sort of owning an animal hospital and like it had loads of like sick seagulls and things, didn't it?
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
Cruelty to pets is rising was another headline.
Well, this is related probably to the other thing about people abandoning pets, and it's all to do with partially to do with the economy and stuff. When the economy goes down, people can't afford their pets anymore, and they just dump them.
It wasn't just that. I mean, I had to look at the article, and there were some like horrible things that people were doing to them, as like microwaving their cats or whatever like that. And I think that's probably. I don't think that Coronation Street would ever do anything about cruelty to pets, because I think it's not taboo, but it's the kind of thing that it's like not worth getting on the bad side of Peter or anything for.
It's like if you're gonna. The thing about microwaving a cat is it makes a really horrible smell.
Don't be so cruel. It's horrible. But yeah, I mean...
No, don't do that. We don't agree with it. It's terrible.
I mean, the closest they got was when Tracy was almost going to have Eccles put down when there was actually nothing wrong with it last year.
I can't see... If you're cruel to an animal, to me, it's worse than being cruel to a person.
I don't think that they would have child abuse storyline. And I don't think they would have pet abuse storyline.
No. If I couldn't work for the RSPCA or anything, I'd only work there for about 5 minutes before I tried to chop someone's arm off or something.
This is the last headline that I found, which was quite interesting. I went onto the Manchester Evening News and I found this one. Apparently, there's a craze called Doga, which is yoga with your dog. Is the latest craze coming to Manchester. Apparently, the canine-friendly classes see owners perform traditional hatha yoga poses while their dogs roam freely around the room. Owners are also shown how to perform canine acupressure and massage on their pups, helping to alleviate stress and anxiety.
Why can't the dogs learn to do that to us? This is what annoys me. They just lay back and take it, don't they?
I think that this is a craze coming to Manchester. Then definitely I could see.
Southampton next.
No, I want to see who'd be into yoga on Coronation Street. Do you think that Maria probably could be into yoga, and she could do that with Ozzy.
Mary would as well.
Yeah.
Mary would go.
So she'd be doing yoga, not with a dog, but with her tarantulas or her turtles or whatever she's rescued.
Dogs are very good at yoga. They invented the downward dog pose.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I don't know if a lot of people know that.
Well, I don't know if any of our listeners have got any ideas for storylines related to pets. We haven't come up with a huge amount of interesting ones, but
not really.
Those headlines there have a few ideas, I suppose.
If you had breeding dog on there, you know what would happen? Like a show dog. It would be a girl show dog, and then it would be. No, I'm trying to think. It would end up a storyline where somebody had a prize show dog who was a female dog, and then somebody else's stupid mongrel would make her pregnant and have like mongrel children.
They could have like a show dog that was then kidnapped or something as well, couldn't they?
Oh, yeah.
That could be a storyline.
That's still a sore point in this country.
Why?
Is it Shergar that got kidnapped, the racehorse?
Oh, yeah.
By the IRA. Terrible business.
We asked for some listener feedback last week about Corrie pets, so we had a couple of people writing in. Christina says, I'm not against having animals in the show, but I always get annoyed when they try to centre a storyline around an animal. It always ends up being an OTT comedy storyline, usually an animal running off with something. I remember being particularly irritated by Mavis and her budgie. I've liked Jack and his pigeons, Craig and his rat, David and his rabbit. What the show is missing is a female character, preferably one without children, who owns a dog and treats it like a child. I think that we all know someone like that in real life, and so they should be represented in the street. So I suppose Mary could be the one like that, childless, or Julie maybe even as well. I can imagine Julie with some kind of pampered pooch.
I can imagine her like getting to a really neurotic, crazy stage, and then she's like wheeling it down the road in a pram. Yeah. Can you imagine that?
I can imagine that. That'd be a good idea. Jo said that she misses Jack pigeons. Didn't David used to have a bunny? Yes,
he did add a bunny, yeah.
and he died. I don't know anything that David's buddy Barney, he was called. There's a publicity shot somewhere of little 10-year-old David hugging a rabbit. But all I found out when I was like looking on the internet is that one day David was playing football with Barney, hopping around the garden, and the next day he died. So that was a bit sad.
Concussion.
Yes. Amy, go on.
She says, I think they need some cats.
Yes.
Norris should have a cat, preferably one of those bald cats like Mr. Bigglesworth in the Austin Powers films. I love cats, and I think they have a lot of character. Maybe they're a bit more difficult to train and wrangle, hence their absence from the show. I only started watching in 2000. Were there any crazy cat ladies or gents in the past on Corrie? The only one I've seen is the nice ginger in the opening credits.
Yeah, well, I think Minnie Caldwell is the one you need to look for there, Amy. She was the craziest crazy cat lady.
This is why you need just a crazy cat lady, just in general, so you don't have to worry too much. As long as you got like 5 or 6 cats, doesn't really matter if they're the same ones.
I suppose there could be a storyline where like developing over time where somebody just gets more and more and more, and it kind of starts off comedic,
great.
and then it would turn into like a sad situation where she had to get rid of them all. I don't think I'd like that.
No,
Get to keep their favourite pet. Final mention then, Amy just mentioned it, the cat on the title sequence, and this is it's quite funny because the animal that is most iconically associated with Coronation Street is definitely the cat, isn't it? Just because of that one on the title sequence. And
well, isn't it also there is an audible meow, or did they get rid of that?
There is a meow on the title credits, but I don't know whether it's one that they put in.
Of course it is.
Yeah, so so you like.
Did you think there was like a band walking around?
Yes.
Playing while they were panning across the streets of Manchester?
Well, this cat first appeared in the 1976 title sequence, and Bill Podmore, who was the producer at the time, has spoken about it, and he said, I asked to see all the sequence film shot years before in the back streets of Old Trafford and Lower Broughton. Although much of it lay on the cutting room floor, it was reassembled into a continuous film. So they were just looking for shots that they could kind of cut together to make this title sequence. And so he was watching this huge long film, and then suddenly on walked that wonderful cat. When it curled up in the spring sunshine, I knew I had found the perfect clip. It looked exactly as though it had contentedly sat down to watch the programme, and from that day the Coronation Street cat became almost as famous as any character on the show. It provided us with an enduring mystery too. Any number of people, imposters all, insisted they were the owners, but its true identity was never discovered. So it's kind of funny that these things happen by accident and then they grow to be iconic.
It's one of those things that bothers me, though. Do you know what I mean?
What?
Like a mystery.
Who is the cat?
Yeah.
Well, they reshot the title sequence in 1990, and there was a competition on This Morning to cast a replacement cat, and the winning cat called Frisky, his owner John Paul Rimington from Leeds was paid £200, which doesn't seem like very much money to be on Coronation Street for 5 days a week or 3 days back in 1990, and yes, since then every title sequence there's been a cat. 2002, 2010 we've had new title sequences.
When are we going to get some new title sequences?
I know, it's time, isn't it? It was 2010 the last one, because I don't like the current title sequence. The current one, it really winds me up. It's too like blurry, and here's a bit of Manchester, and
I don't understand why they've got a show about people and random people walking around in the intro sequence who are not in the show.
Well, so that when people leave they don't have to recut it, don't they?
Well, don't have anybody in it at all then.
I do not like the current title sequence. I remember when they first brought it in and I was like, well, they're going to have to get rid of that because that's clearly awful.
I know, you remember you saying this.
There are pigeons in the title sequence as well, aren't they? They're flying up along the houses.
My favourite thing to do in a title sequence is to have the name of the person, and then they're looking off to camera, and then when their name comes on the screen, they turn and smile into the camera.
That's a bit American,
they do a wave
isn't
or
it?
something. They should do that.
I think they should do that just as a comedy title sequence, like Too Many Cooks kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
don't look that up on the internet.
No, don't. You'll regret it. So they wanted to find out this missing cat, and they were like, people were coming in and saying, "Oh, this is my cat," and then it turns out that the place where they were filming it was nowhere near where this cat could be, and it's.
Oh.
I like how there's a bit of a mystery there, and I hope they always do. Hope they do always keep the cat. Sometimes they had on the the Back from the Break now end of part 1, they used to have like a dog running down the street for one of them, and there's always a load of pigeons there, aren't there? And now we have meerkats in the break as well.
Exactly.
That's some new meerkat sequences this week.
Yes, you had to rewind it me.
Every time there's a new meerkat, compare the meerkat thing on Coronation Street, it's like, I gotta go back and watch it. But they're not as good as they used to be. I like the ones when they were set on Coronation Street and they had all the meerkats, but now it's just Alexander and Sergei, aren't they? They're neither me whole
I
meerkat
can only
family.
apologise.
But I still think they're better than all the other sponsored by things.
You like Cadbury's before?
I did like the Cadbury's
My
one.
favourite one was the furniture people.
That was the worst one. That's boring. Meerkats are funny. That they are now the Coronation Street iconic animal.
Are they?
Yeah.
That's what Mary
Maybe,
should get.
should somebody get a meerkat on Coronation Street?
Of course they should.
A real life Alexander. Right, I think we've talked enough
exhausted that,
about
haven't we?
animals on Coronation Street. I hope people enjoyed that little discussion, that feature discussion, and there's going to be another one in 4 weeks' time, but I don't know what it's going to be on. But if anyone's got anything else to say or they want to tell us about pets or add any final thoughts, then do email us and let us know.